Hello, this is James Pratt with Twotrees Technologies, and today we're going to talk to Mo and Eric with Fortinet. And we're going to talk about for schools about a product they can use. It's actually not products built into Fortinet products, about their network access control layer. And so I want to cover that. We're going to show you how that can help a school, how it really doesn't cost you anything if you already have Fortinet products, and what the benefits are to that feature set. So. Mo, can you and Eric, can you guys introduce yourselves?
Yeah. First of all, James, thank you for having us. I think this is a great opportunity to have the discussion. My name is Mohamed Alkazaz, and I'm the Director of Engineering for the MOPLA region, Missouri, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Arkansas. And I've been in the industry for 20 plus years. I have a degree in computer science and information technology, so I had some, background in programming. In addition to that, I was, love networking and the infrastructure side, the system and the network and the security. So I jumped in there and, worked through different vendors, Cisco, Palo, Aruba, Fortinet. And I'm glad to be here, and hopefully we can cover what the audience are looking for.
Cool. Well, how about you, Eric?
Yeah, I am Eric Catelfio. I'm actually a system engineer in Oklahoma City, so I cover the Oklahoma territory. My true customers are going to be the K through 12, the education. But prior to that, I actually was more focused on the DoD side. So I did larger government projects and worked for Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force. It was kind of crazy because I was more focused on the compute side. So I did a lot of virtualization and doing software-defined data center type functionality, software-defined storage, software-defined networking. So when Fortinet called me up and was like, "Hey, come work for me," at first I was like, I don't want to go back to selling like appliances and whatnot. And but man, what a world. I mean, I would be kicking myself now, knowing what I know now, that if I wouldn't have, taken that adventure, kind of coming over here and just, seeing, because to me, when you're working on the compute side, all I need networks is to push electrons. They're just, I need an electrician. I need someone just to move electrons. That's all I care about. I can do all of the smart stuff on the compute side. I was wrong. I really had a limited view of what I thought networking does. And, with the conversation we're having today, especially with IoT or OT, and then this conversation that we're having with NAC, yeah, there's definitely a world there that I was not introduced to until just recently.
Yeah. So let's define NAC a little bit for the clients. I mean, it's called Network Access Control is what it stands for, and for specifically for K-12 clients, even commercial clients, especially a small to medium-sized business. Mo, can you go into kind of what NAC is and what it does for a client? Kind of an overview of NAC, and then we'll get into the more specific about Fortinet.
Yeah, I mean, in general, NAC is, as you mentioned, it's the network access control. So basically, people tend to have these environments, and then the environments grow, as we all know, and they don't know exactly what things are connected to them. They don't know exactly if everyone supposed to be on the network is on the network. So that's kind of like in high level where NAC comes in, and NAC help out in wireline and wireless as well, where it will identify the endpoint. It will provide separation between the functionality of these endpoints, right? It can also provide separation based on the authentication that the user has and apply role-based access. And then if you think about the whole NAC as a product in general, it can also look at the endpoint from like a readiness perspective. Does it have, and that kind of like lean into the zero trust, base a little bit. Hey, does it have the right patches? That does it have the, the right, basically corporate policy or like a school policy before I allow this device to get into the network. And if there is anything that goes outside of these rules, the device will be quarantined the admin or the whoever running that segment will get notified, and then they can take the necessary action around that endpoint or that user before they will be allowed to operate on that network. So in high level, that's what NAC is doing within the network.
Yeah, so it's basically like it's security, really. I mean, it's another way. I mean, people talk about firewalls. That's really, in our views, it's a key feature to block outside access, but the NAC helps you control access inside your network behind the firewall of who can come in, especially when you're a school or a business. You have people coming onto your network that you may or may not know, and their computers may be infected or not. And how do you control that and know who's on your network and what they're doing, where they're traveling, and all that? So network, yeah. So that's kind of what this does.
Yeah, the evolution of that is really interesting, because if you go back a little bit and look, the focus was on the the perimeter. Basically, back in the day, you have your firewalls and you want to protect that from access to that. But then kind of like the trend shifted, where now the endpoint is more of the top. A lot of the if you look in the news lately, a lot of these hacks or accesses or whatever, it's coming in from the endpoint. It's not coming in actually from the perimeter, which, that's why a product like NAC and endpoint protection and, even XDR, came in now more in light. People are more focusing on it because, a phishing email can compromise your network, like an unpatched endpoint from an antivirus perspective can compromise your entire environment, and we want to mitigate that. And NAC is and actually as people kind of like adopt the zero trust architecture, and zero trust is not a product, it's basically a design, and it's a mentality and how you design your environment, and the simple of it is no one get access unless they are either identified or they have a function that they're trying to do. And that's kind of like in high level. And you can apply that to your school. You can apply that on your cloud environment. And NAC plays a critical piece, into that. The challenge is, and we will talk about that, and kind of like that's part of our discussion, is the complexity and the learning curve that trying to adopt a full-blown NAC product that can bring into the table. And sometimes maybe the customer or the school doesn't have enough resources to be able to span and learn all these additional features. Sometimes you do with the larger environments, enterprise environments, because they have the teams to go and basically that's their sole job. But sometimes, you just you have someone that wearing multiple hats, and you need to enable that person to be at that, security level and be able to accommodate what they're trying, to, accomplish or deliver to the students or their end customers.
Yeah. So my experience with NAC, I mean, NAC is a really awesome product when you look at it. I mean, the full-blown NAC is really pretty incredible what it can do. But it's not a simple thing to implement. It's a big lift. And what Fortinet offers, correct me if I'm wrong, but Fortinet offers a way to get into NAC without so much complexity. Yep. And you guys have a full-blown NAC product, but just the base product of FortiGates and the FortiAP wireless devices, they have a lot of features NAC built right in that if you buy into the Fortinet ecosystem, you got a beginning of NAC without the complexity. And then if you ever need that extra feature, you can add on the Fortinet.
Yeah.
You might touch on that just a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. So this is all started with how kind of like Fortinet, look at the market and kind of like our go-to-market, right? So Fortinet, if you ask me, I think it starts in a reverse, right? Like we have security and we're building everything based on security, and that's where you have like secure networking. A lot of other vendors I've seen outside and I've worked with, they have basically networking, and now they're trying to bring security on top of networking. So that's a good thing that Fortinet has to begin with. That we built our products based on like security first, basically. So we start the conversation from our gates, which is kind of like our main product, and and the gates, and again, I hate to call the gate a firewall, to be honest with you, because the gate has too many functions that, like firewalling is just one of these functions. So part of that is, you have our gates can become your wireless controller and also can become your switch controller. And then what that does, it will give you the simplicity to manage your security and network from the same, same basically interface or same platform without having to go in multiple direction. The other thing is you will have this full end-to-end visibility. So once you have the firewall in place, once you have our switches and APs, then you will have the end-to-end. So anything that connects to the network that is managed by the FortiGate, you will have visibility to. And then as we have that, that's the kind of like the first step. And this is the caveat I want to make is like what we're going to talk about, the FortiLink NAC is part of a Fortinet product, and it works only on the Fortinet environment. If you want a vendor agnostic product, you will go with our FortiNAC, which is multi-vendor, full-blown NAC solution. If you want to compare it to ICE or ClearPass, that is what FortiNAC is. But the FortiLink NAC, and just to clarify, like FortiLink is a Fortinet proprietary protocol that works at our gates and our switches, and it does all that magic in the background. Basically, it'll allow you to manage your APs, manage your switches. It allows you to have that end-to-end visibility. It makes it makes managing it very simple. It makes like backing up the configuration, setting up the links. Basically, you hook up the APs, you hook up the switches. They will get recognized by the firewall, by the gate, and then you can authorize them. And now you have them ready to use. And when you have all these steps, like you have the firewall, you have the switch, and you have the AP, you will have this FortiLink NAC already in there. And what that is, it's a light version of NAC that is available. It's a feature. It's not a fully blown. But the reason I like it, because I think a lot of our customers can accomplish mostly all they need from that feature. So what that will do is it will allow you first to do segmentation. And I know segmentation can mean different words and stuff like that. But for example, if you define, you go under the platform, you define your NAC policy, and then it will recognize your devices. Hey, you have a Linux device, I'm going to put that on VLAN 10. You have, like a Windows, I'm going to put that. And then it also can segregate if it's a printer, phone, all that stuff. So that's kind of like the first function that it can do for you, out of the box. So that's one. The other one is it can also help you with your 802.1 authentication. So if you're trying to implement user-based, device-based authentication on Wi-Fi and wireless, you can also do that out of the box. You define a security policy, and that security policy will have the parameters that is necessary for the authentication. It can talk to AD, it can talk to radius, and it will provide that for you. Again, keep in mind, you're doing all that, out of the box. No additional license needed. It exists once you get the gate, the switch, and the AP.
So what they can do is, for example, I mean, if I have students, when they log in, they can check with the AD or with their classroom management system and put them into one VLAN. They can do the same thing with teachers.
Students can go, guests can go and get separated in multiple VLAN. And because of the integration, keep in mind, all that will go all the way up to the firewall level, and then you can apply security policies. I mean, you can turn in your, antivirus engines, web filter engines, IPS engines, or, on top to basically inspect that traffic. And going back to our discussion about FortiLink, one of the other major thing we like to talk about is the east-west traffic. All that traffic between, you'll have visibility to it. That's number one. Then number two, all that traffic is going to get inspected. So if you have one machine that got compromised somewhere on your east-west traffic, that machine can get stopped before the traffic get segregated around the network, and it will cause problems. So
And if I can chime in,
Yeah.
you know, one thing we always talk about in Fortinet is security is a journey. So we have these really cool roadmaps where we start out, hey, here's where you are today, here's where you can be in the future. A lot of times, without someone from within the industry coming out and helping you make that assessment, sometimes I think some people think they're further along in their journey than they really are. So, for example, me personally, I'm thinking a NAC is probably, more in the middle of the journey in your security policy, where sometimes I go to schools and we'll just start a basic conversation. Hey, tell me about your environment. And they're like, oh, I have switches, I have APs, I have a firewall. And then you slowly start to realize one of the things in the industry, and Mo brought it up, was we talk about segmentation. And you and I, we all just started talking as though VLANs are just things that people do. The surprising thing is, I go to most of these school districts, and I'm actually going to throw out a number that's probably crazy, and I could be wrong. I'm going to say about 60-70% of the people I talk to, flat network.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Right? Like, and so we're talking as though VLANs are just, part of the norm. They should be, but they're not. So what's great about having a NAC is even our NAC Lite product, a true NAC, it's because you already have segmentation and we're building onto that. Our NAC Lite works really great if you aren't segmented. We can come in and, hey, we have a list of your MAC addresses. Boom, we can now apply certain security policies to that. We're aware of your operating system. And within our NAC Lite, we can now apply certain security policies or direct traffic a certain way.
Chromebooks, for example.
Oh, 100%.
Yep. A lot of schools have Chromebooks, and put them separately.
And we're doing this without an agent, starting out, right, with the NAC Lite. And so eventually we want you to get segmented. But then, later on, it's funny because we are encouraging these people that are flat network to go segmented. And then later on in the journey, we're kind of saying, okay, it's okay to go flatter because we're doing NAC and we're supplying tags and other things that go with it. So I just want to make sure, I'm aware that, hey, some of you guys that we're talking to today may have a flat network. Our NAC Lite is going to be what helps bridge that gap.
Yeah, good point, Eric. Very good point.
And yeah, and even to Eric's point, like with the flat network, and even if people have one VLAN, we can still provide segregation. So we can, like there is really a checkbox within our platform where you can block what we call like an inner VLAN traffic. So basically, if you're on the same VLAN, you don't want your machine, and that's a very basic thing. To Eric's point, like we've seen all these environments, and we had to have a kind of like a solution for it. If you don't want to, even if we take it to the OT side, some of the OT environment doesn't want to, do the VLANing now for some reasons because, and so that we kind of provide that segregation in there. So, I mean, all that is cool. That's from a segregation perspective. Now you kind of like and as Eric mentioned, we have this maturity level of security. That's, now you're kind of like dabbling in with it. And now you have, some segregation. You have the traffic, east-west traffic is being kind of like inspected. You're a little bit more secure. But the cool thing I like to also work on, and I think James, you and I talked about this before, is the capability of doing automation and out of the box for free. The funny part is also every time I mention automation, people kind of get, especially in an environment where they have like one person or two, they get a little bit, hey, am I doing Ansible? Am I doing, Python? I don't know these things. 100% I agree with you. But we have our built-in automation, which in reality, it's kind of like a trigger-based automation where you, define a trigger, you define, what the action you want to do with that trigger. And with our visibility, with the way the system are built with, FortiLink and FortiLink NAC, what this will allow you to do is to create a very simple automation where you say, hey, if I have as you're scanning my network, as the traffic go through, if there is a compromised endpoint, please take that endpoint, throw it in a quarantine VLAN that is created by default for you, so you don't need to do anything, and then send me an email when that happens, so I can take that. And to me, that's kind of like elevate the game a little bit, because not a little bit, maybe a lot, because now you're talking a SOC, a little bit of a, like a SIM kind of capabilities.
I think I don't think customers know SOC and SIM, so let's talk that.
Yeah, the security operations center, basically, people will send all their traffic to some sort of, like a SOC center, where the traffic get analyzed and they get identify anything that is compromised, and they get contacted. And if it's a managed SAC services, which we have those as well, they can, help you take actions and mitigate that threat.
And that's expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not cheap. So this is like a light version of that.
Exactly, it's a light version of that, and that's the point that I'm excited about. Is just like, hey, I can do, again, going back to me being minimalist, and I can do all these things, with only the product that I already had. You define a rule, and then it will take all these things, and then so that's from a security perspective. But even from your environment management perspective, hey, if I have an AP down, send me an email, right? And the cool thing, and if you go to the integration as well, which is really interesting, you can even send a team message. You can send a Slack message. You can send a webhook. There is a lot of these things that you can do. And we have some customers, especially larger schools, some of them take a major advantage of that, and they basically built it in a way where it's now integrated with their own internal tools, because and that's the other part that I like to bring in is our openness from a vendor perspective. So we adopt an open API concept where we integrate with hundreds of third-party vendors. So because we understand, security is basically not a not a siloed thing. It's a thing that you need to play with other, and you need to play with other really well. And that's where, they can, get in, work with our API. We can hook into their devices, download telemetries, and, take actions based on those.
I think that's important, because I talk to customers all the time about FortiLink, I think it is.
Yeah.
And you guys have you have links to a lot of third-party products that will help make their life so much easier. You don't have to program these APIs. It's already been done.
It's the security, the third-party integration, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have more than 300 alliances with different vendors. Some of them are competitors, and then even our other agencies as well. So yeah, it's very intriguing. And the other part is, and if you go look at NSS, and you go look at the Gartner, kind of like how they evaluate how much value you get for the throughput, we come on top from the value that we kind of bring in with the amount of money you put in as an investment. And these features that we're talking about now, like the FortiLink NAC, the ability to the indication of compromise, the automation are part of that, and that's why I'm kind of excited about it, and I think it can make a huge difference for a lot of our customers.
And
so, I'm sorry, Garrett, go ahead.
Oh, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but just to kind of build on what Mo's saying, there's a very popular virtualization platform that people bought into for, that ran the industry for 20 something years, or 15 at least. And a lot of people were forced to always buy the enterprise version of that, even though they're smaller shops that may only had 3 or 4 servers that were hosting maybe 20 virtual machines, but they would always have to buy these larger enterprise licenses, because they wanted the management tool. But with it, they were only using 10% of the enterprise features, and 90% of it would be wasted. And when I was doing consulting work, I'd go talk to people and I'm all like, hey, and they're like, how do we save money? And I'm looking at this and they're spending all this extra money on these additional features that they're never using. And it's because, one, they would like to implement them, but really day to day, it's just not something that's going to help them out long term. It would be something that's nice to have set up, just so they could stay within the industry standards. Well, I see that a lot of times with some of the other products that when I go out to sites and stuff like that, people are like, "Hey, I bought this product. It answered a question for us, or at the time," but they're not being able to utilize it 100%, and nor would they, because like I said, it was a simple answer. What was great working for Fortinet, and looking at the FortiGate. I've heard people say this before, or 1 + 1 = 3, and that FortiGate kind of is that mystical creature for me, right? As a controller, as that being able to take what could just be a firewall, have it be your switch and AP manager, right? Now I have this ability to track the east-west traffic, the stuff that's going on inside my network, not just the stuff that's leaving and coming into my network. And then on top of that, we have this NAC Lite well, we call it NAC Lite, but it's actually like it keeps calling it FortiLink NAC. For most of our customers, I'm going to say a good chunk of them, maybe 90%, easily within the K through 12 space, it's going to be that answer they needed. They didn't need to go to that enterprise level software just to use the 10%, right? We have a lot of this stuff baked in just by purchasing the basic platform, which I think is great.
That's a really good point. So to wrap up, I want to talk more specifics on maybe some examples that a school could use. I mean, some real specifics. Instead of talking about the Fortinet products, let's talk about the school environment. So I've got Chromebooks, and I've got Windows machines, maybe I have some Mac computers, and most people are getting away from having their own servers. They're putting them in the cloud. So explain to me how this would. Let's talk about, I'm a school IT person, and I've got like me and one other person that's got to do all this work. So how do you guys make my life easier if I have a FortiGate, a FortiAP, FortiSwitch? And give me some examples of how you make my life easier.
Yeah. I kind of started, and then Eric, you can chime in and I know I tend to talk a lot, so you guys can tell me to shut up.
Right.
So honestly, the beginning is once you get signed up, you get the gate. So the first thing you will get is this single point of management. And that's going to simplify everything. And then, so you don't need a person that is, that knows like deep dive, switching and NACing and all that stuff, but just high level will help a lot, right? And then if you're familiar with if you go and kind of like do quick training about our firewall, then you will be familiar with the switch and the AP. So learning curve, that's going to reduce it a lot, right? So that comes in. Then you have an enterprise level security given, that is provided by the backend, which is the FortiGate. And as you know, FortiGate is it's been in the Magic Quadrant for a long time as a leader from a next-gen firewall perspective. So that's, we talked about simplicity and management that is there. Then you can start, like if we kind of like go down the list a little bit, it just, hey, what do I need to do from a security perspective? Hey, let's, do segregation, to your point. Put the Mac somewhere, put the APs, put the Linux machine or Chromebook somewhere, put the Windows machine server somewhere, get those separated,
I could even tie in based on student, like to put my fifth grade all my fifth graders in one group, right?
Yeah.
So I want to put my seniors in a different group and then isolate those down. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, if you integrate with AD or if you integrate with Intra ID from Microsoft Azure or and then you can do even a user-based segregation, and then they will be on separate. Think about it in like role-based access. So hey, if you log in as a student, here is the 5 things or the 10 things you can do or you have access to, and here is the security features that you can look at. Then if you're logging in as a teacher and you want to change things, there's stuff that you can accomplish. But like if we just focus on the NAC piece, so like after the environment has been scanned and all that security, now the firewall will come in with verdicts. Hey, here is these endpoints that has issues. Either they failed an antivirus scan or they failed an IPS patch or something. And then with automation, the simple automation that we talked about, again, all that can be done by one person. Like basically that will be taken and it will be placed in a quarantine VLAN, something you defined or something we have defined for you automatically.
So a kid gets their Chromebook infected at home, they bring it to the school network. Boom, it's put into isolated VLAN, you get notified.
You'll get isolated, you'll get notified, then you can go work on that, or you can give them an alternative device to use.
You set your minimum baseline,
yeah,
of what you're willing to tolerate on your network.
Mm-hmm. And then if you really want to do like take it to the like next level and start doing like 802.1x, and if you have a radius server in the environment, you can get into that right away and have that done. And as you progress through your journey, we give you basically the tools to start building on that. Let's say you want to do, you start to get interested in zero trust and kind of like understanding what's really happening at these endpoints. Do they have really, the right patches from an OS perspective? Do they have really the correct antivirus? Do they have, whatever policy we're trying to push, right? Then again, the firewall will allow you to do that, given the openness, given it's already have the things that you need without any additional. You don't have to pay any additional things to get there.
I think that's a biggie. You get all this, almost everything we've talked about is just built right in. I mean, it's just right there.
That is the beauty. It is built right in. One major thing, honestly, like we also have, and we've seen great success in the market is SD-WAN. A lot of people charge you. And I know that can take us to a different conversation, but I just want to mention it's already included, it's already free. And then if you have 2-3 locations that have our environment, like our gates, you can start getting those set up in an SD-WAN environment. So that's the point, and that's why Gartner and NS, like the NSS, they look at us as from a throughput perspective to the value that we bring, we're the leader. And that, I mean, again, that doesn't come from nothing. That comes in from a lot of the things that Fortinet invest in and put in place to enable our customers to be able to do and have a more secure network.
Yeah. And James, do I have time to share 2 stories?
Yes. Yeah. Quickly.
Quickly. So one of them, this was just a story that's been told throughout the Fortinet life. Especially in the K through 12, but there was a story about where there was a private school. Most of the kids that go there are really well off, and at the time, one of the bigger cars to sell was the Tesla. And because it's a private school, they don't have a bus system, so obviously the parents have to show up every day to come pick up their kids and drop them off or whatever. Well, over time, the school, everybody's got a friend that works at the school or whatnot. So password security for the wireless kind of got a little lackadaisical. Sometimes parents are waiting in line or sitting in there, so they just jump on the school's Wi-Fi. And they started noticing that there was these huge data pushes or pulls on their network while this was happening. And they're like, what is going on? Like, this is pretty crazy. And they started realizing that some of the parents were there long enough that the Teslas were thinking that this was a good time to start downloading their updates to their vehicles.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
schools paying for it. Yeah.
yeah,
And,
right.
and that's not unusual because I see schools even with everybody in the town has the Wi-Fi password, or
Yeah.
maybe I've seen them where they don't even have a Wi-Fi password.
Yep. So at any rate, there. Oh, so the cool thing is, one, the Fortinet was smart enough to immediately identify that, hey, look at all these MAC addresses and identified them as Teslas. You know, right? That this particular MAC address belonged to Tesla. Blah blah blah. Uh, Through that, they were actually able to use, our NAC Lite to start saying, okay, fine, we're maybe not going to be able to kick off the Joneses because they're big donors, and we're not going to be able to, remove the Thomases because they do a bunch of stuff outside of the, because everyone has to kind of chip into these private schools. Um, so it was through the NAC that they were able to start segmenting or segregating the traffic a lot better and a lot easier without knowing whose Teslas they were. We just go in and say, hey, look, if it's in this particular MAC address range, let's go ahead and start doing this. Maybe we put them in a more reduced bandwidth or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And the other story is that kind of the same thing, right? You go to a small town, and they're not a customer yet, and it's not a school, but there was there was a district, and they were having an issue where they know who's supposed to belong in the network, but everyone's friends with maybe someone that, like, a third party that comes in, and they would just give them. So they had this password sprawl. Um, and they were like, well, people don't want to learn their passwords. Sometimes we do work with an older generation. They're a little bit crotchety on certain things, and they're not willing to, they don't want to have the password management skills that you're supposed to have, right? I think, me personally, I think I manage over 180 passwords, day to day. So they didn't want, they like to have this stuff stored. They like to be able to write it down on a piece of paper. They like to, have it, taped to their screens. And it's going to be this NAC Lite that would act as a security boundary, for the fact that our end users sometimes are grumpy and they're not going to change. So what we have to do is overcome that. And it would be through this that we would be able to create those policies and protect our environment.
Yeah.
Nonetheless.
So that's for sure. I understand that. So we got to wrap it up. I think Mo's got another appointment coming. So I want to thank you guys for coming on our podcast. We're really excited. Twotrees is a big supporter of Fortinet. We really like the products. We've installed a lot of them and have really good success with them. So thank you guys for coming on board. And
James, I truly appreciate it. I think our partnership with Twotrees is really great, and I think what you guys are doing is phenomenal. I hope this was informative, and thank you for having us. And hopefully, if you want to do more of these in the future, please just reach out.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, James. Yep.